All-Around Joe podcast, we optimize your human performance from my personal experience as an athlete, coach, and all-around self-improvement junkie. On this edition of the All-Around Joe podcast, I am talking with Jonathan Levitt of InsideTracker. Jonathan is just an all-around good dude, and in this podcast, we get to talking about how he's gotten into running marathons, ultra marathons, how you could do that as well, some strategies for hanging out with super cool people in your area. If you hang out with cool people, then you're much more likely to do what they do. Jonathan also works for InsideTracker, which is a very cool blood testing company, and we talk about that a little bit. We also talk about Jonathan's podcast, For the Long Run, which I recommend that y'all check out, and we get into what it's all about and who he interviews and all that fun stuff on the show today. And we just talk about, how you guys can get better and be all around the best version of yourself. So this is a really fun podcast for me because Jonathan's a cool guy and really fun to talk to about all kinds of stuff, fitness, running, technology. We get into it all in this one. This podcast is brought to you by the Get Better Project, which is your high-end solution for at-home workouts, whether it be full gym equipment that you have in your garage or you're just going to do something at the foot of your bed in your bedroom. We've got you covered and everything in between. So the Get Better Project was put together because I wanted to be able to help people do what I do. It's the workouts that I am actually doing because every single time that I have had a peer group around me that's around me a lot, they've taken on the habits and they've started getting themselves in amazing shape. So that's what I've created the Get Better Project to help you with on what you're working on. Okay, so it could be that you just want to build more confidence. It could be that you want to see those abs for the beach this summer. It could be that you want to get better at CrossFit. We cover all of those bases. We make you a more awesome human being in this program. And if that's something that is interesting to you, head over to thegetbetterproject.com and click on programs. We've got a full nutrition included version and just a workout version. So check those out. It's what I'm passionate about. So let me help you help yourself, all that fun stuff. All right, let's get into this fun interview with Jonathan Levitt of InsideTracker. Hope you guys enjoy it. Here we go. Jonathan, how you doing today, man?
I am good. How are you?
I am awesome. Hanging out here in the van studio in Arizona. Where are
nice.
You,
I am in Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Yeah. How's the weather up there?
It's finally starting to feel like spring. It's 35 degrees out this morning, and it should be 50 by the end of the day. So we're getting there, almost out of the weeds.
Yeah, when I heard spring, I was like, all right, maybe we'll hit the 60s. Maybe
no.
70s. No, not
nope.
quite.
No, but 50 feels like 75, so it's not bad.
Totally, and it's probably great running weather.
Yeah, it's the best time of year for that.
Cool. Is there still snow on the ground?
It mostly melted this past weekend. It got up to 60, so it's pretty much gone.
Okay, cool. So I've talked with you a lot, but I'm not sure that everyone at All Around Joe here has heard your story. So I'd love to actually jump in. I don't know if I've heard your full story either. So here's for learning more about friends.
Sure.
Take us back. How did, little Jonathan grow up? How did you get to where you are? And were there any influential figures along the way that, let's say, took you to where you were business-wise or running-wise or any coaching-wise, any of those things that stand out for you?
Yeah, so that's a pretty loaded question. So I'll start, and I may ask for the question again. No, I'm just kidding. So I grew up playing baseball and hockey. I was pretty average at hockey and maybe a little bit above average at baseball. Hated running. Wasn't really good at sports. And somewhere along the way, I went for a run. I don't know, maybe senior year in college, and I was like, this is fun. At the time, it was like really only to like lose the beer gut and run off the hangover. But I started enjoying it. So fast forward, I don't know, 2 years, and it was April 2013, and I was at the Boston Marathon, and I was at the halfway point, so I was in Wellesley, and I was looking at all these people, different shapes and sizes and speeds and skills, and I was like, look, if all these people can do it, like I can do it. Like I'm fairly athletic. Why not? So it was on that day that I decided I would run a marathon. And I ran my first 13 months later. So that was fun, and I was hooked immediately. And the rest is history. No, it's been fun, sort of diving further down that rabbit hole. And we've talked a lot about ultra running and sort of the psyche of, what you think about when you're off to run 25 miles, 50 miles, 100 miles, and the kind of person and the kind of mental space you need to be in to do these things. And what I love about it is the, like anything is possible approach, or the lessons that you learn through sport translate into life. Like you can do hard things, you can persevere, you can have difficult conversations, you can do all these things that are uncomfortable, um, that you learn through sport.
Absolutely. So did you have friends that were running marathons when you did this first marathon, and how was that experience?
Yeah. So, in July of 2013, I started doing something called November Project, which is a grassroots fitness movement. It started here in Boston in 2011. So it was about 2 years in at the time. And so like most of my friends were running marathons, and not only like running marathons, like running fast marathons. And it's like I ran a 3:35 as my first marathon. I was like, well, shit, that was slow. And
That's good,
and my friends were like, you're surrounded by freaks. Like you just have to remember that. And so it was the kind of environment where someone was always doing more with less. Like they had two kids, or they had, a job that demanded 80 hours a week of them, or they're, running a, 120 half, or, a sub 3 marathon or something. Just like more. There was always more that could be done. There are always more workouts to do and stuff like that. And so like I fell into that rabbit hole of like more, and I kept getting injured. And I was just trying to do everything. And so you asked about mentors or role models, or coaches. I got connected with a coach who was like, look, I can fix this injury problem that you keep having. Like you just can't do everything all the time. And so I worked with that coach for 4 years. He took me through my first 5 marathons, and really helped me develop my love of running. His name is Steven Stam. He's a track and cross country coach in Florida, and he was definitely paramount in enjoying my love of, or nurturing that love of running.
Nice. Let's talk some highlights. What's your highlight reel at this
My
point?
highlight reel. I ran a 5K in what was it? I think it was 2014. That was like one of those days where everything clicked. Like start to finish, like you wake up, you're like, hell yeah, today is going to be a good day. It was a race that Shalane Flanagan was hosting up here in Boston. And so like she was at the race, and we had just got her to go to November Project the day before. And I had, I don't know, like 35, 40 friends that showed up to this race to race it. And I get to the start line, and two of my friends look over at me. They were two of the leaders at the time for November Project Boston. And they look at me. One of them is a, like, I don't know, like a 2:30 marathon, or the other is like well under sub 3. And they're like, I don't know, 15 or 16 minute 5K guys. And my goal on that day was sub 18. And they look at me and they say, you're going to PR today. Like, this was the race that I was targeting for that year, basically. And they're like, you're going to PR today. Just follow us. And I was like, okay. and I had that, like, everything feels awesome the whole way, despite, how painful 5Ks are. And I didn't look at my watch once, and I PR'd by, I think it was like 20 seconds on that day, and ran 17:42. So like well under 18.
Yeah.
I haven't run a 5K like that since. It's still my PR, and it's still like the best day. Um, one of the best days of running I've had. You ask about the highlight reel. The 50K I ran in Tahoe this past fall was like that day I'll remember for the rest of my life. Um, I was supposed to run North Face, California, which is a 50K, 50 miler, marathon, etc., in the Marin Headlands in the Bay, and it was canceled due to the fires in Northern California. And so a friend earlier in the week sort of made a joke like, "Hey, you want to come out to Tahoe and I'll show you some cool trails and you can run your 50K." And I've been training with a friend who was a friend named Jenny, who was training for her first marathon, and we were like devastated that our races were canceled. So we went out to Tahoe and we put out some tweets and some Instagrams, and 50 people showed up, and we raised $20,000 for fire relief, and it was just a day like playing in the woods with friends. So that's very high on my highlight reel list.
That is so cool. How many marathons have you run at this point?
I've done 5, and I just signed up for my 6th.
Ooh, what is it?
Cinco de Mayo, actually.
Oh, and where?
Providence, Rhode Island.
Okay. Okay. That's fun.
Yeah.
Is there anybody in your family that's into running?
My dad has gotten into running. He's a lifelong cyclist, and he travels a fair amount. Not a fair amount. He travels for work, and it's just so much easier to run than bike when you're traveling. And he's picked it up over the last couple of years, and it's been super cool to see him do his first half marathon and set his sights bigger and higher as time goes on.
Cool. Let's talk a little bit about that mental psyche that you brought up earlier, what that you go through during these. Well, I guess we could talk about whether or not you go through them in certain distance runs, but at what distance do you think that you start to go into those places where you're like, man, I can do anything, or, I'm working through some really, really tough things and I'm just going to keep on moving through them. So let's what are those stages? When do they start? How do you go through them?
So I think that you can hit that at any distance. Like I've never raced an 800, 800 meter, and I've heard that like you see God when you race those things. and I mean, my only experience is like at that low end is the 5K, and you can hurt a lot and choose to continue. Mile 2, mile 3, it's just so painful, but you can choose that pain and you can choose to push forward. The marathon is an interesting beast because it's still fast, and it's fairly monotonous compared to trail running, but I used to think it was super physical, but now I think it's just entirely mental. To be able to just keep churning your legs at the same pace for 3+ hours. I've had some like not good marathons where I had the fitness and it was just like mile 18. That's it. And when you hit that pivot point, am I going to continue now that it's hurting a lot, or am I going to sort of mail it in? And I've had races where I've chosen more comfort. I've walked, I've done that kind of stuff. And then I've had races where like it was literally not an option. And like you run faster than a 10-minute mile pace, I'm falling on the ground. Not joking, that happened in Boston 2017. And that was like the best thing that's ever happened. It was the most pain I've ever been in my life. Like my calf was seizing. And when I say faster than 10-minute mile, I'm on the ground, that happened like 4 or 5 times. And so I crossed that finish line and I cried out of both pain and pride because it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I ran an hour over goal time. And after doing that, I knew that I could do anything. And the mind is just such a Like it would have been easy to walk off the course when I saw my friends at mile 24, or when I saw my friends at mile 18, or when I saw my parents at mile 13. Um, for whatever reason, it was not my day, and it was tough the whole way through. But when you choose to continue and then you achieve that, no matter what the time is, that's a huge win.
Yep, absolutely. I completely agree. I had a 50 miler in New York actually for one of the North Face races where my hip flexor like stopped working, and I had to. I tried all these different things, and the PTs couldn't help me. So I was like, let me think of like reciprocal inhibition. So like how one side of your body contracts, the other side relaxes. So I started doing lunges, and that worked. So I'm doing a 50-mile race, lunging every mile or so
Oh
to
my
get my
God.
hip flexor to loosen up. And I had gone into the race thinking I was going to try and be top 5. And at that point, it completely blew up. And like you said, I was like, 2 hours or something behind my goal.
Yeah.
But looking back now, that's the race I think of when I'm like, man, I could do
Struggling,
anything.
yeah.
I came through this, and it's
And that's a
amazing.
hell of a race to begin with, first of all.
Yeah, that was where I cut my teeth actually, a trail racing. It was like
Yeah.
the Bear Mountain
Yep.
half, I think, and then I moved up half 50K 50 miler. So I
Yep.
love the race. It's a great race.
Yeah, it's fun.
But yeah, I mean, do you think that you would have continued down this path if you were not with the November project?
I don't think it would have been as fast, and I don't meaning like accelerated.
Yeah.
I've done so much racing with November Project friends. I've set goals with friends. I've chosen to do things that scared me that I probably wouldn't have chosen without a little bit of peer pressure. Um, and and yeah, I mean, there are plenty of people that have big goals without November Project, but that's what facilitated my love of running and my love of the running community, starting here in Boston and then definitely all over.
So is the November project all over? And like, could somebody get involved with that anywhere? Is it just in Boston, or are there other things like that around the country?
Yeah, so there are 49 cities. I think it's in 7 countries at this point. It's mostly North America. There's some in Europe, some in Asia. Um, Pretty much all major cities in the U.S. at this point, or most, on the east and west coast, and some in the middle of the country have it. But yeah, just check out their website, november-project.com, to find a tribe near you, as they say.
Yeah. And forgive me, but how would you explain what the November project is?
So it's a bunch of people that enjoy uh, the social benefits of running. So like people who enjoy competition, or people who enjoy, um, basically it's a group of people that show up at 6:30 in the morning ready to hug, ready to sweat, and ready to work hard. So it takes a certain kind of person to be ready to socialize at 6:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
um, and then also be ready to like work really fucking hard at 6:30 in the morning, um, and then be done by 7:15. Like the hardest thing you'll do all day is done at 7:15.
I love it.
um, and so it's super cool. It's free. um, I travel a lot for work, so I get to go to it in other cities, and it's fun to meet people and run with people, in San Francisco and Austin, Texas, and LA, and Minneapolis, all these places across the country.
That's awesome. And I think that one of the biggest things that people could do if they want to get into running or CrossFit or whatever it may be is find a group of people like that are
Definitely.
doing these things and that are positive and whatnot, and you'll transform your life or business even. Like if you
Right.
want to, a real estate investor, go hang out with a bunch of successful real estate investors.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. What are you into right now? What are your goals? What are you trying to
So
accomplish?
short term is the marathon in May. I want to run something longer in the fall. I would like to run a 50K or 50 miler at North Face, California. And I hope I get to talk to him before this, but I haven't told my coach yet about the Grand Canyon adventure I'm thinking about. So you've interviewed David. He's my coach, David Roach. A couple of my friends are thinking about or are planning a rim to rim, possible rim to rim to rim adventure in October. So it could line up nicely with something longer at North Face. So those are like the 2019 goals. Long term, just continue to enjoy the process and motivate and help other people to do the same, and grow my own podcast and grow that audience, so that I can share super cool conversations with really cool people.
Yeah, so you brought it up. Let's talk about For the Long Run and what that is.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I get to travel a lot for work, and much of that travel is going to a race or a town with a lot of athletes that we work with at InsideTracker. And so I get to go to coffee or go to lunch or dinner with these super awesome athletes. And like the one that I remember most vividly is I had just run the Manitou Incline with Zach Miller in Colorado Springs, and then we went and got dinner, and I asked him a question about like, why do you do this? And he answered in like a 20-minute answer. Like he just kept talking, and it was like I was just like, yep, more. This is incredible. Like, and I was like, I need to share these conversations. Like, it was that one that really kicked it off. That I was like, I am so privileged to be able to do this, and I should share it. So the goal of For the Long Run is to explore the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated, and share their process, share their journey with people who want to hear it. And so I don't want to say it's mostly elites and pros. It's not. I have a handful of local friends that are on. Some of them are high end athletes. Some of them aren't. I seem to have a lot of sports psychologists that are interested in this, and interested in doing interviews. So I've done 3 of those so far, and they're basically like just therapy sessions. It's like I have one with a sports psychology consultant. She was like, "You realize you just got a free hour consult here?" And I was like, "Yeah, thanks. Let's talk again next month."
Yeah.
So it's like stuff like that. That's just like super awesome conversations with people that people are enjoying, and it's blowing my mind that 600 people are listening per episode. And it's like, who are all these people that are listening? But cool. Like it's so fun. It's so fun.
Well, dude, I think I know why, and where they're coming from is because your social media is awesome. Like you crush your social media. So before I continue to tell you how awesome it is, how can people find you on social media? Let's just plug it right now.
Yeah. So I'm JW Levitt, Levitt on Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff.
Okay.
And
so guys,
thank you, by the way.
Yeah, like I was thinking about how people, and I'm into social media. Like I love it. I try and study it and whatnot. And I think Jonathan might have maybe like a team behind him, or like he might be an identical triplet or something because of the amount that he's on social media. And has, a successful life and runs marathons and ultra marathons. So anyway, I would recommend that you follow him for sure. Whether or not you like to, run or eat tacos or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think my my Instagram bio is basically mostly photos of running, tacos, or food, and dogs. So that's a pretty pretty good recap there.
I mean, I've been following it for a while, and it's my when I go to Twitter, actually, I'm like, man, I need to do more Twitter, and I go there and I see that you've posted like 30 times in the last week, and I'm damn, Jonathan, killing me.
So maybe not that much, but like there are scheduling apps that like instead of just like dumping every time you have a thought, like just loading it into there. And so like I try and try and plan around things like that, so it's less of a burden and more of a like making the tool work for you.
For sure. Which one do you use?
I use Buffer.
Okay, me too. That's what I'm using. Very cool. So what is your goal for the long run?
My goal for the long run
Term.
about the podcast, or like literally for the long run?
Let's
I'm
talk the
kidding.
podcast.
No, the goal for the podcast, I have a list of like 75 people that I want to interview. Um, just get through that, and like every time I go on a trip, I want to interview half dozen people. I'm going out to Boulder for a week in May, and like I could stay in Boulder for a month or like forever and not run out of cool people to talk with. Um, so really the goal for that is just continue to have really awesome people on the podcast and do it all in person. I've done 13 so far, and 12 of them have been in person. And I think there's a rapport that you have in person and also sort of like on a video call like this, but you just can't beat talking to someone in person and the rapport that you can build around that. So I just want to reach as many people as possible with that podcast. Maybe do some live shows, something like that. I consider doing something like that around Boston, the Boston Marathon. Um, I'm not this year, maybe in the future, but um, yeah, I'm just having a blast with it, and people are enjoying it. So just keep it rolling.
Yeah, that's cool that, or what you said about, the connection that you can make in person. I've totally found that I want to do more of those in person myself, because it is like, I know you, so we've
Right.
actually met in person and we have a connection. And I feel like that's easier to rekindle that as we're talking
Right.
about video. But if we'd never met before,
Right.
it is a little bit different.
Yeah, for
There's
sure.
you can't feel the person's energy quite the same. So I'm with you. I think that's really cool. Uh, let's see. What are you thinking as far as future 5-10 year goals for longevity of running?
So David's approach to training is
Can we stop there really quick and
yeah,
give David a little bit more of an intro? Because
yeah,
man.
yes, David is the man. David Roche and his wife Megan Roche are the founders of Swap Running. So Some Work, All Play is their coaching group. They coach some of the best trail and ultra runners, road racers in the country and many internationally as well. They wrote a book called Happy Runner. It's all about living like puppies and unicorns and why it's okay to not feel like that sometimes. Their approach is running can be a part of life. I feel like they're life coaches that specialize in running. And I started working with David in July, and it's really been a transformation of like how I approach running. I'm not glued to my watch nailing splits. I'm focused on effort, and he doesn't really care about splits. I mean, he does, but not in the way that I've cared about them in the past. He'd rather have your easy runs stay the same effort but get faster. Um, so with him, it's all about the long term, and it's all about developing a good relationship with running and allowing that to play a role in your life, but not dominate your life. That's a place that I've had issues with in the past. It's sort of like having it all be all consuming. Um, and the goal is to do it for a long time. I was going to tweet about it. I forgot to, but like I see these two women running every single day in Boston or Cambridge, and they're, I don't know, 70 years old, and they wear the same outfit. They're two older Asian ladies, and they're always smiling, and like I want that. I want to be them in 50 years, 40 years, 80 years. Who cares? They do it in the rain. They do it in the snow. They run in They probably don't run in hurricanes, but they run they run in all these conditions, and they always have a smile and they always say hello. I want to do that, and I want to do that for a long time. And the approach, so that's my long-term goal.
Very cool.
And to BQ at 80 years old.
Well, so I think you nailed something about like having fun and smiling at people and whatnot. Do you have like, when you go into a run, do you do that? I mean, because I've noticed that one of the things that I love about trail running is that like I'm high-fiving people as I'm going by. And when I was road running, it was a little bit different. But what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so Boston is a bit of a unique town in that like most people are most runners are super friendly. Most Bostonians are not. Um, most runners in Boston will say hello, they'll wave, they'll give you the head nod, and half of them are wearing Boston Marathon gear. So like it's just cool knowing that like you go for a long run on the marathon course, and half the people are wearing a shirt from 2015 or 2016 or whatever. So like you know what they've been through, and the day that they had from a weather perspective, from heat, whatever. So it's that like instant connection that you guys can have. So yeah, I say hello to everyone, and it's super cool. But there's nothing like the trail community when it comes to community and saying hi or waving or asking how the run's going or petting the person's dog or something like that. So yeah, you can't beat that.
Yeah, very cool. Let's talk nutrition. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
on nutrition?
My thoughts on nutrition, they've changed over the last few years. I've been much looser with my diet in the last, I don't know, year-ish, and I feel the best. I'm running the best. I'm the least injured, and I'm actually the leanest that I've been. Go figure.
Yeah.
And I used to be like super strict with my own diet. And part of that came from like I wasn't eating any gluten. Part of that came from my mom and sister having celiac, and so I wasn't eating it when I was living at home. And then it just like became something that I did, and so I've added bread back in. I don't have celiac, so I can do that. I've added bread back in. I've added a whole lot of stuff back in. But like I've also added like desserts and pies and cookies and all this stuff that like people restrict. And I know that I am nailing what I need to do. So I'm doing the 80% through, validated through InsideTracker. We can get to that. And the 20% is fun, and it's much easier to do it that way than like trying to aim for 99 or 100% and feeling bad about when you stray from that. So my if you had to like put a label on my diet, I'd say it's like Mediterranean-ish, with room for whatever the hell I want.
Okay.
And lots of tacos.
Lots of tacos. Do you know like what you're trying to hit as far as calories and macros?
Pretty much from a caloric standpoint, that's the only thing that I try and hit. I don't have a certain number. I just know I need to eat a lot. I was
You're one of those guys, huh?
Yeah, I was going through the my blood work from InsideTracker with one of our dietitians, and she was like, "You're not eating enough." So she had me use MyFitnessPal for like 3 days to see what I was eating, and I was like under by over 500 calories. And so part of the repetitive injuries that I kept having were from energy deficit, and I was exhausted. And so I added 500 to 750 calories on a daily basis, which is fun, and it's a lot. But I have more energy. I recover faster, and I feel better as a result of that. But it's a lot of it's a lot of eating. And so it's a thing like that I have to be mindful of. Like I always have a snack. Like here's my cup of oatmeal with chocolate and peanut butter. So so it's like yeah, I'm intentional with it, but there's also room for play or a glass of wine or three or a cookie or whatever.
Cool. And I want to talk about Inside Tracker, but before we get to that, what is your race day food philosophy?
Meaning leading up to it or the race itself?
The day of.
Okay, so in the morning I'll have a bowl of Picky Oats. So it's Picky Bars is the company, and they have an oatmeal, like a single serving oatmeal, and they have like fruits and seeds and stuff like that in it. And then I'll either have a half serving of whey protein or an egg or two, just because like I get really hungry and I feel like the protein helps. Um, and I've had some of my best runs and best long runs and with that routine, so I feel like it works. Um, and then like leading up to the race, 20 minutes before, I'll have a Stroop waffle, and then depending on the distance of the race, I'll have like lots of gels.
Okay. What kind of gels do you like?
I like the Goo Energy Labs gels.
Okay. Interesting. And do you have any kind of timing philosophy for nutrition while you're racing?
Yeah, so I'll take my first at 45 minutes in, and then every 30 minutes or so, I'll have another one.
Okay. And is that for short and long distances, or does it change as you get longer?
So that's for anything above 2 hours.
Okay.
So
Can you?
for less than 2 hours, I'll have a gel like in the middle if it's longer than 90 minutes.
Okay. And so as it gets longer, your body is. I've just had issues with continuing gels. So you can
Yep.
do gels continuously.
So the longest I've run was 7 hours, and I had I think 12 gels. And what I did was I started with one flavor, and when I got sick of that flavor, I switched. So I started with savory, and I switched to sweet. So I was having like chocolate and chocolate outrage and espresso and this and that. And I was like, don't put another chocolate flavored thing in my stomach. So then I had like the berry and the salted watermelon and things like that. And um, what I did also was I was eating a lot of chips and drinking Coke,
Okay.
and it's just like I don't drink soda, and drinking soda in that arena is like, oh my god, this is the best thing I've ever tasted. Like I had like an 8 ounce, one of those like super tiny 8 ounce Coke bottles, so it's like super crisp, and I put one down and I was like, oh my god, that was that was incredible, and that was like 5 hours in.
Okay, interesting. I have this weird thing where at about, let's say, 30 miles or so probably around a similar time, um, I crave oranges like every
Interesting.
single time. I can't get, it's like, all right, oranges, where are they? And I
Yeah.
need oranges.
Huh. That's
But
interesting.
man, I couldn't do that many gels. That would definitely wreck my stomach. I find that like I could do them early on, and then I had to have something solid. Like I'd actually pack a sandwich sometimes and drop back.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's all about what works for you. I haven't. I'm sure at some point I'll have that fatigue, the gel fatigue, but to this point, I haven't. I haven't hit that like, okay, this is making me nauseous point.
So we talked about race day. Do you have anything that changes prior to the race? I mean, everybody had like these, pasta feeds and things like that we've heard of people doing, carb loading and all
Yep.
that stuff. Did you have anything? Does anything change for you leading up to the race?
Yeah, I mean, I'll have a bit more in terms of carbohydrates, like an extra piece of bread or a cup, an extra an apple or banana or whatever. Um, the way that tapering works is if you're reducing your training volume but not reducing your nutrition, it's effectively carbo loading. So you don't need to change anything from the nutrition standpoint, but by doing less from a run volume standpoint, you're effectively carbo loading. Um, so I use that to my advantage, and also have a little bit more bread or pasta or quinoa or sweet potatoes or something like that, just to top things off.
Cool. All right, so let's talk about InsideTracker and what that is first off. If people don't know what it is on this podcast, then I don't know where they're coming from. But anyway, let's talk about what it is and then how you're using it and what you do for them and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, so InsideTracker is a blood analytics platform that provides personalized guidance on nutrition and supplementation. So every body is so unique, and we process nutrients and nutrition differently. So you and I could eat the same thing and train the same way, and our blood values would look totally different. So what we do is we evaluate food frequency, exercise, and lifestyle and supplementation, and then provide you with very specific and tangible, like, do this, eat this food X number of times a week, take this supplement in this dosage, etc., in order to boost energy or improve sleep or improve overall health. And it's very dependent on the specific individual. So the way that I use it for my own training is, like I said, I've become, I don't want to say lax, but more loose with what I'm eating, but I know what I need to do every day, and I know what I need to do every week. So I know I need to eat oatmeal every day, and I know that I need to eat fish 2 or 3 times a week, and I need to eat red meat once or twice a week, and take a vitamin D supplement and take a magnesium supplement. Most people stop at like 3 or 4 things, but I've now been doing this for 4 years, so I can, like, I've been doing the basics, and like now I'll like add in 5 or 6 things that I need to do on a consistent basis. So I test, I don't know, quarterly, just to make sure that things are continuing to improve, and that nothing has deviated too far from baseline or the last test. And so that's a big reason that people who aren't doing it for athletic reasons come to us. They want to establish this. Mark Cuban talked about it a couple of years back, and he was saying, if you have the means to do so, you should blood test quarterly so that you get this baseline on yourself, so that if you're sick, you know what your normal looks like. And so that you can stay on top of, like, you may be normally in the 80 to 100 range, just using completely arbitrary numbers, 80 to 100. And you may have test values that are 83 and 87 and 92 and 81. But if you get a 60, you know that there's something going on there. But 60 might be in the normal range. But you know that if it's dropped or increased by something meaningful, that's something to pay attention to. And so the way that people are using it is not only for the health, not only for the performance, but also the health and longevity. And that was really the main goal of the company, not to help elite athletes squeeze out an extra 1%, but to help delay the onset of aging related disease through a personalized approach to diet and supplementation. And so to answer your question, what do I do for the company? Pretty much everything in the endurance space is my terrain, and then working with customers that have questions or things like that. But I work with a lot of coaches and athletes and podcasts and teams, both in endurance and the professional sports world, as a way to implement the recommendations and help understand what's going on internally.
Very cool. Yeah, and guys listening, if you didn't know this, I'm a big fan of InsideTracker, so I highly recommend that we all are utilizing that service, and it's been game changer for me. I mean, something that Jonathan said earlier, for me, when I did it, I started having to eat more carbs and more food essentially as well, and it was amazing how actually I leaned up a lot.
Yeah. Go figure.
Yeah,
we see that
really
a ton.
weird. Yeah,
we see that a ton within CrossFit, that people are just not interested in carbs. And the most common change that we see for CrossFitters is eating more carbs and getting not only an increase in performance, but an increase in recovery and increase in body composition, or a improvement in body composition.
Yeah.
because you're giving the body what it needs and what it craves.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, because I talk to so many people that don't know why they're eating what they're eating. So it's so important, I think, to know what your blood
Right.
markers are and actually, put some stuff in your body that's going to support that.
Definitely.
Let's geek out. Have you done any tests before and after these longer races? And if so, what happened?
Yeah. So I've done a handful of tests around marathons, and I also tested after the 50K. So 2 or 3 days post event. So the muscle damage values peak within 48 to 72 hours. So you want to catch it in that uptick. Around the 2017 Boston Marathon, I tested probably 4 times, and both in peak training and right after the race, and then after that, shortly after that, because the values were so bad. So um, Boston 2017 was a very hot day, um, but that's not why I had a bad day. I think it played a part, and basically I spent the whole 3 days prior walking up and down Newbury Street and meeting people, and I spent the whole day on my feet. So I tested post race, and my testosterone dropped 700, almost 700 points.
Whoa.
Just for context, like most people don't have 700 points to lose when it comes to testosterone. So the drop was massive. I've only seen like a 300 point drop post marathon prior. So this was double that. And basically, what I learned was like I was considering running another spring race. I was like, oh, I ran an hour over goal time. It wasn't that punishing. Like I can gear up and do it again. I had a great training cycle. But the inflammation was twice what it was for the Philly Marathon. The testosterone dropped twice as much, and liver enzymes were super elevated as well, which we also see post uh, hard workout or hard race. So I took that to say like, okay, absolutely not. I ended up taking 21 days off of exercise entirely, and waited for those values to restore. Whereas a lot of people would take a poor race result and turn around and go race again. And when you do something like that, you're already in the hole. And I had the data to show that I was in the hole. So I can only imagine how much worse I would have been for the rest of 2017 had I done another, punishing or hard race. Um, what's interesting is after the 50K, it was just like I had done a long run. Like it wasn't, the data wasn't that bad. And I felt great. I ran 3 days later, 4 days later, and felt fine. Part of that was because it was like it was basically like a fun run, but it was a 7 hour fun run,
Right.
which is not a short amount of time. I was like expecting to see some changes, but we averaged a 13.5 minute pace but there was 7,000 feet of climbing. Um, so at altitude, we were at like a 7,600 foot average for the race. So it's cool to be able to compare stuff like that and help steer decisions on recovery time based on how this objective data looks.
That is very interesting. So do you recommend if someone that is an InsideTracker customer does a test a few days after or some period after one of these larger events, or let's say CrossFit competitions or something like that, so that we can figure out how long we should recover?
Yeah, totally. So our high performance plan is great for that. It's half the price of Ultimate, which is the most popular, most comprehensive option, and it tests all those values that we want to catch in that window, and then gives you guidance on what to do to help with recovery. So there was a paper that was published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning titled Biomarkers in Sport, and it identified 4 to 6 different key points in the season of when blood testing is valuable. And so during a peak week or after an acute event. So a race, a competition, something like that are two of those key points where you can understand, okay, am I doing too much, or did I leave it all out there, or can I, do I not need to treat this like the only race of the year or the only competition of the year, and I can recover and get back into it. So the cool thing is when you have baseline data from the beginning of a season or something like that, you can compare that deviation from uh, what your body looks like in a more rested state. And so you can see, like, my testosterone value was not that bad, all things considered, but knowing that it was like 450, which is um it's not optimal, but it's still in the normal range.
Yeah.
But like, I run high for whatever reason. Must be all the sleep. Um and so on its own, that 450 wouldn't have been that bad. I think the number was 450, but anyway, the number wouldn't have been that bad. But knowing that it dropped from, call it 11 something, um, I knew that that was a huge swing. So if you just do it for the first time post event, it's interesting, but not very conclusive. But if you have something to compare it to when you're not completely trashed, that's when it becomes super valuable.
So if you're going to take an athlete that is a high performance athlete, meaning that, their life is kind of designed around these training and events,
Yep.
is there an optimal test sequence for that particular athlete that you put them on? Like, do the ultimate test when you're kind of like before you're starting to get a baseline and get everything, and then do, these performance tests leading in, and then after. What do you tell people?
Yeah, that's pretty much perfect. The benefit of the high performance plan is that you don't need to fast for it. So you can do it when you're in a higher training period and like eat breakfast and then go in and do the test. Um, a lot of athletes find it difficult to fast for 12 hours and go somewhere without eating breakfast, myself included. So it helps with that. But yeah, the ideal cost efficiency standpoint is baseline, mid-season, off-season, or end of season, or after an event. Um, if you're targeting, let's say you're targeting a marathon and you're doing a 12 to 14 or 16 week training program, you do it week 0, so like before you start. You could do it week 10 before it gets hard, and then you can do it after your race, after you've recovered, like 10 to 14 days post race. So when you're starting to get back into it again.
Okay.
From a CrossFit standpoint, let's say you're getting that January baseline, you test again, call it April, May, June timeframe, and then some athletes, we work with a lot of the games athletes, and so a lot of them will test like a week out from the games. You can't really make changes that year, but you can use that to understand um, how your body took that volume. Or you can do it, 3 days after, and we've seen some fascinating data from athletes testing 3 days after the games, after trashing yourself for a couple days in a row.
Very cool. Very cool. Any technologies other than InsideTracker that you love?
I love Strava. I use Strava a lot. Other technologies on top of that, I I use uh, an app called, I forget what it's called. It's a sleep. It's a sleep. It's called Sleep Cycle, and it's an app on your iPhone. It's really creepy, actually. It listens to your breathing at night and evaluates sleep quality. And then in the morning, you input like what you did the day prior, and it starts with some trend analysis around the things that you do that contribute to better sleep quality. So, like, I know that taking magnesium actually does improve my sleep quality. I know that taking vitamin D actually improves my sleep quality. Um, I know that having alcohol, one glass of wine before bed, does not have a substantial impact on my sleep quality. So like, I do those things. Um, I know that 3 glasses of alcohol for sure impacts my sleep quality. So I don't do that on a regular basis. So that's really the only other piece of technology that I use consistently, I want to say. I mean, I use a Garmin watch. I like that for the tracking, resting heart rate and things like that. I've measured HRV consistently in the past, but it became a nuisance to like put it on my finger every day and test that. And it pretty much always, basically how I felt, pretty much always matched what the data was showing.
Yeah.
So sometimes I would throw in an extra rest day or an extra easy day as a result of that. But like I've gotten to know my body well enough that like I don't need an app to tell me to take a day off. Many people do, and I used to for sure. So it was great at the time, but now I'm much more trigger happy on on taking a rest day.
Yeah, I think that, I was one of those people definitely needed an app to tell me to take a rest day, or
Yeah.
a person to tell me to take a rest day.
Isn't
So,
that funny? It's like sleep in. No, I want to wake up and train.
yeah, man. I don't know. You just get like this. There's something about training hard that I don't even know what it is, if it's hormonal or what's going on, but there's something going on there, or it's just, stupid.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway, man, this has been fun. I don't want to take up any more of your day here because I know that you got to get back to work. But I have loved this, and let's share your what you're doing, like how people can find you, how they can subscribe to the podcast, social media, all that stuff. One more time.
Yeah. So JW Levitt, JWLEVITT on Instagram and Twitter. The For the Long Run podcast is For the LR Pod on Twitter and Instagram as well. And it's also on Apple Podcasts. It's on Spotify, all that good stuff. And if you tune in, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, guys. And I will be sharing all of those links. If you're driving around listening to this and can't get to them, just remember 187. So it'll be at allaroundjoe.com/187. And I'll have all of Jonathan's links that you can get to following him, which I highly recommend it. I'm not just blowing smoke at you. This some good stuff here. So, Jonathan, appreciate you, man. Thanks for being on the show. And
likewise, thanks for all you do.
Yeah, for sure. All right, buddy. I'll talk to you soon.
We'll talk soon.
Hey guys, that was my interview with Jonathan Levitt of InsideTracker and For the Long Run podcast, which I highly recommend that you all follow, subscribe. When you like it, give it a 5-star review because that totally helps us podcasters out a ton. And you should definitely follow Jonathan on Twitter and Instagram, or whichever one of those platforms that you use. He is really good at the social media stuff to the point where you could hire him as your social media guy and he would crush it. So follow him up. If you are driving right now, like I mentioned on the show, you can go to allaroundjoe.com/187. Remember, 187. And I have all of the links for all of Jonathan's stuff, ventures, coolness on my website there. All right, so that was allaroundjoe.com/187. This podcast, remember, is brought to you by the Get Better Project, which is your high-end solution for at-home workouts. If you have a full gym or you have no gym and you're just going to roll out of bed and do a workout next to your bed in your bedroom. So head over to thegetbetterproject.com and click on programs, and you'll see a couple programs we have offer for you, whether you need full nutrition help or just the workouts. We got you covered. Let me know if you have any questions on that. And I hope you enjoyed this podcast. We love it if you subscribe for free because it is totally free, and give us a review because every 5-star review that we get helps us to launch ourselves up the iTunes or Apple Podcast board and get us more listeners so we can impact more people's lives. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. the All Around Joe podcast, where we optimize your human performance from my personal experience as an athlete, coach, and all-around self-improvement junkie. I will see you on the next podcast.